These are moments when Joe Rogan completely destroyed woke guests on his show.
And that surgery that they received was associated with considerably higher risks for mortality.
Have to spend the money providing mental health. It is a problem. It should be addressed.
In this video, you'll see every moment Joe Rogan destroyed his woke guests, starting with Adam Conover, who got schooled on the topic of trans children. So the conversation kicks off with Joe Rogan hitting Adam with the big question: how do you feel about trans athletes? And Adam quickly says there's no problem with it.
But a sports with trans athletes who are competing with the with their gender, right? That is a sporting world that I'm more interested in, right?
Joe Rogan jumps in with a counterpoint, arguing that transgender women might have some biological and physiological advantages because of their previous male biology.
My point of view is that there's a reason, there's a distinction. There's a reason why we make the distinction to have male athletics versus female athletics. The reason is that males have a physiological advantage over women. So if you're a woman and you're a natural woman and you don't take any extra hormones or male hormones, you're not taking steroids or any sort of performance enhancing drugs, you're doing your very best to compete. But then someone comes along that was a man for 30 years and decides that they're going to be a woman, and this has happened, and literally transitioned a few months ago, and competes as a woman and destroys records and dominates you in that sport. That's
Joe's dropping some solid points, right? But Adam's not backing down. He fires back, saying there's no such thing as a level playing field.
I disagree, and I've.
What do you disagree about?
I've already. Well, my main point being the one that I already made, right? That I don't think that there is such a thing as a perfectly level playing field. I think we decide what kind of playing field we want to have.
Sure, but we do make the distinction where we don't allow men to compete in women's divisions.
And I think that distinction may be breaking down a bit, right? And
Adam's all about the idea that gender barriers are coming down, right? But Joe Rogan isn't buying it just yet. He throws out a tough question: should males be allowed to compete in women's weightlifting?
So you think that males should be able to compete in the women's division of weightlifting?
No, I don't necessarily.
But they can if they transition.
But here's where it gets even more interesting. Adam steps up and argues that since some people start transitioning as young as 7, those biological differences might actually shift over time. It's a pretty bold take, and you can almost feel the tension in the room rising.
Folks transition much earlier age. If someone is transitioning from the age of 7 years old, right, and working with those hormones, from that age, right, their body situation can be very different than the one that you postulated, right?
But then everything changed when the topic of transitioning kids came up. Joe was not having it. He pushed back hard, saying that 7-year-olds don't even know who they are.
There's no reason to give kids hormones, and there's no reason to decide before a person's frontal lobe is fully developed, which doesn't even take place till 25. People don't know who they are. People don't even give their 7-year-old phones. You don't let them vote. You're going to let them decide what sex they're going to be for the rest of their life?
And here's where Adam starts telling the story about his friend's trans kid, saying that because the kid feels like a girl, they need to start hormones immediately. He's implying that it's not even a choice. But then Joe steps in and boom, he totally disagrees.
I have a friend who has a trans kid. He's explained that my child from a very young age consistently said, I am a girl, and has never contradicted themselves, never changed their mind. And so the humane thing and the thing that he felt was good to do as a parent was to embrace that choice on his child's part, right?
Okay, but if that's who they are, if they think that they're a girl, why do you have to give them hormones to make them more of a girl?
Joe hits Adam with a simple question, and Adam starts stumbling over his words. And this is where things get wild. Joe absolutely destroys him.
Because I'm sorry, can you expand on the question?
It's a simple question. If you say that the child thinks it's a girl, so you're going to give the child hormones. If the child thinks it's a girl, let it be a girl. Why are you adding hormones? If you're shooting hormones into a child and you're affecting the child's development, you're saying that's not a choice. That's nonsense. Of course it's a choice. You're choosing to chemically change this child's body, and you're saying that this isn't a choice. Well, it's definitely a choice to do that.
But hold up. That's not even the whole story. When Joe presses him on research showing the positive effects of kids transitioning, Adam completely drops the ball again. He just can't back up his argument.
Look, the last conversation I had with a person about this was a trans military veteran who wrote a book on these issues, right? Comprehensively looked at the research and told me that the research shows that the evidence that you're asking for exists, maybe not on a 30-year timeline, but there have been studies of this, and here's what we know about them, right?
About children transitioning?
Yeah, I mean, that is my understanding of I have not looked at the research myself.
I don't think
I have not
there's
done this
research
topic on my
that
show.
shows the positive benefits of children transitioning. I don't think that exists.
Well, we can't solve that in this conversation right here.
While Adam Conover was struggling to back up his claims, Flint Dibble took it a step further. He completely denied his previous claims that Graham Hancock was a racist and a white supremacist.
People ask, here's just a Google search. Archaeologist Flint Dibble says Hancock's claims reinforce white supremacist ideas, stripping indigenous people of their rich heritage, and instead giving credit to aliens or white people. Actually, I've never...
Did you really say that?
When Joe Rogan tries to get to the bottom of whether Flint actually made these claims, Flint just keeps denying it over and over.
No, I said that this idea of Atlantis, the way it goes back 200 years, it has been used for those reasons.
So are you saying your quote is incorrect?
I think that it's editing me out of context, Graham. I've never called you a white supremacist or a racist.
No.
Flint says he only calls the sources Graham references racist, not Graham himself, but Joe disagrees. He thinks that by linking Graham to these accusations, Flint is trying to get him canceled.
This quote here, reinforce white supremacist ideas, stripping indigenous people with a rich heritage, and instead giving credit to aliens or white people. None of those things are true.
I know, Graham doesn't even talk about aliens.
Right, but
and
what?
So
Did
that's
you
why
say that?
I said that not in specific relation to Hancock's claims, but in specific relation to this narrative of Atlantis that has gone back hundreds of years.
Flint fiercely denies the accusations, but what he didn't see coming was Graham showing up armed with even more receipts.
But here's the Guardian, so they're misquoting you, are they? As Dibble states, such claims reinforce white supremacist ideas. They strip indigenous people of their rich heritage and instead give credit to aliens or white people. Why didn't you get the Guardian to put that right?
But what happened next left everyone speechless. When pushed for answers, Flint stumbles, unable to give a straight response, sidestepping questions left and right like he's got something to hide.
Did you
Decide
actually
what
say
they
that
write.
though?
I did not say that Graham reinforces white supremacist ideas. As I've said,
So this
the
quote is not
history,
real?
They stripped the stories of Atlantis? Yes. Right?
So the
And-
quote reinforce white supremacist ideas, that's not yours.
No, that's not a quote. It's not in quotation.
Right, it was in the other article. Right, but
This
that's
is your
not
own,
his quote.
This is
though.
your own article, Flint. Here you are. I'm quoting from, that's a quote from your article published in The Conversation. This sort of race science is outdated and long since debunked, especially given the strong links between Atlantis and Aryans proposed by several Nazi archaeologists. You are associating me with this, and you are attempting to get me
I'm asking
cancelled
you to
effectively.
distance yourself from that. Is
But
actually
While Flint continued to dodge accountability for the rest of the 4-hour podcast, never truly owning up to his mistakes, the next guest, Pete Dominick, took a completely different approach, one that spiraled into a whirlwind of contradictions and interruptions. And the moment that had everyone talking, when he arrogantly claimed that the United States Constitution should be rewritten. Yeah, you heard that right, he actually said it.
Our Constitution is also silly. Like, let's remake everything. There's so much better that we can do. Have a serious conversation about what kind of guns and bullets people can have.
Look, Pete might have good intentions. He genuinely wants to tackle gun violence in America, but there's a massive, glaring question that nobody's answering. How do you even begin to take on a problem this huge? Every single study says the same thing. There are way too many guns in circulation to just go around confiscating them all. Joe Rogan says it's flat out impossible, but Pete? He's pushing for these government buybacks like that's gonna solve everything.
Even if you said you can't have any bullets, you'll all go to jail. There's so many guns. You're not getting them all. It's not possible. There's more guns than there are people, which means there's more than 30 million guns?
That's the most important point. There's already 330. There's more guns than there are people. So what do? I think you buy as many as you can back for sure. You spend a whole bunch of taxpayer money.
And just when Joe was laying out a sensible middle ground approach, here comes Pete Dominick, smugly derailing the conversation. Instead of debating the buyback idea, he pulls a classic move the goalpost maneuver, claiming the Second Amendment has been misinterpreted.
If you wanted to do that without changing the Second Amendment, like you just have a buyback where you just offer people the opportunity to make some money by giving their guns up.
The Second Amendment has been interpreted wrong by the Supreme Court in my opinion. I mean,
We
ammunition.
need to talk about the Second Amendment. I mean, it's a big conversation.
No, because
in this
people can have
country.
guns. You can have guns. The brick has a
But I
right to
know.
have guns. You just
Okay,
can't
but-
have these guns.
All right, here's where things start to heat up. Pete's getting all fired up, but Joe's just sitting there, calm and unbothered. Meanwhile, Pete's interrupting left and right, shifting the goalposts, and initially saying the problem was with guns and bullets.
The main issue is definitely the guns and the bullets in them.
The main issue is the person that's capable of shooting people with the guns and the bullets.
No, it's the guns and the bullets.
The guns and the bullet are inanimate objects. Without a person pulling the trigger, we're talking nonsense here.
In the blink of an eye, they turn it into a healthcare crisis, and the entire conversation changes.
The conversation about like the Second Amendment to me is, it's just your interpretation. Fine, whatever your interpretation is fine.
That's what's interesting
But
about
there's
it.
a human impact. It's a healthcare issue, and it's so extreme. If you want to know the answer to healthcare issues, you talk to public health experts. They have those answers.
So when Joe calls him out, asking, "What are you even talking about?" he can't deliver a straight answer. Instead, it's just more rambling and spinning in circles. Exactly what he's been doing from the very start of this conversation.
But wait, hold on. What research? On what?
Well, they don't have
mass
enough research
murderers?
on. They don't have enough research on gun violence.
But what are you
Unfortunately,
talking about then?
I'm talking about if you want to know the solutions for what is impacting and creating death by any measure, accidental death.
Right, but we're talking about gun violence, right?
Right.
What healthcare professionals have the solutions to gun violence?